News that impacts you and your community. 13 on Your Side Evening Plus starts now.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Julia Gorman. Welcome into Evening Plus. We're so glad you're here with us as we continue to recap the news of day to day on this Wednesday. Let's take a quick look here at what we'll be talking about. Of course, we're continuing to closely monitor what's happening in the Christopher SCHURR trial. He's the former Grand Rapids police officer accused of second-degree murder in the death of Patrick Lyoya. We continue to have crews there each and every minute of the day, so we will check in with our Callie, Riley, and Josh about what we saw happen at the courthouse today as we're still awaiting a verdict. Then it's been 1 year today exactly since a tornado ripped through Portage and the Kalamazoo County area. We have a look at what exactly happened that day and the progress that's been made since then from our chief meteorologist, Samantha Jacks. We'll get a quick look at our incredible weather for the Mother's Day weekend and then some fun with some little ducklings to wrap up Evening Plus. First, of course, we will start with that trial. No verdict still as deliberations continued into a third day today in the trial of Christopher SCHURR. They started early afternoon Monday, and once again, jurors were sent home today after they announced they were deadlocked yesterday and unable to reach a decision. The judge at that point told them to keep working toward a verdict. Court has adjourned as of this afternoon. 13 on Your Side's Kelly Lichter is live in downtown Grand Rapids. Callie, it's really a waiting game at this point.
Oh, it truly is, Julia. It feels like every single moment, whenever there's a little bit of movement or sound that could possibly come from that court feed, because again, we're seeing the same thing in the media room as people are seeing at home. You know, we think this is it, this is the verdict, and then it hasn't been for the past couple of days. And so really, like you've been saying, you know, it's just a waiting game. We will get a few minutes of heads up, so we've been told, just to, you know, be able to prepare for the verdict so we can bring it, you know, to the viewers live when we find that out. But again, we are not sure when that day will come. There is another day of deliberation tomorrow, and actually throughout the whole entire trial, we were told that Judge Christina Mims would be gone Thursday and Friday this week. So we were kind of in a holding pattern all of today, thinking, are we going to have to adjourn and come back Monday? Is there going to be a replacement circuit or fill-in circuit judge who would come in for Thursday and Friday? But we were told around 4:45 p.m. today that Judge Mims will be in court tomorrow for another day of deliberation, and maybe we will see a verdict, maybe we won't. Not quite sure how this is going to go, but there's a lot of testimony and a lot of exhibits, evidence to go through. And, you know, after the jury got that jury instruction yesterday saying, please go back, deliberate, come up with a verdict. It seems like, you know, they're taking that instruction seriously and trying to find some common ground in this case, Julia.
With one of our legal experts, Andrew Rodenhouse, and he kind of explained, you know, earlier today we were, as you mentioned, kind of in this holding pattern of, you know, okay, are we going to see a different judge? Are we going to see us waiting for a verdict until Monday, or rather for court to re-adjourn on Monday? And you talked with him today. We've got a clip from that interview just about kind of how that process works. Here's a look at that.
When Judge Mims was reelected most recently, she has all this power over what happens inside her own courtroom. And so it's really difficult for any other judge to step in and make her do anything other than the Court of Appeals or the Supreme Court. And so she has wide discretion in her courtroom to make decisions like this. And nobody's going to look, any court reviewing it is going to have to give her what's known as a discretionary review. And so what they look for is what's known as quote unquote abuse of discretion. And so if she did something that would fall outside the range of reasonable outcomes, then it could potentially be an abuse of discretion. But if she, in her discretion, thinks that this is the best way forward and can easily articulate why, well, then it's gonna stand up. And so I think she can pretty easily articulate why she would do this. And frankly, it's because of the issues are complicated in this case. She sat through it for all these years, and it would be difficult for, if a jury issue arose where they had a difficult question, for another judge to then step in and say, hey, this is how we're going to proceed, when they maybe not familiar with all the facts of the case. Conversely, she could also very easily in her discretion say, look, I'm going to be gone for these couple days. I'll have another judge available. If we're just taking the verdict, then it wouldn't be a big problem. But she has that discretion, and she's making her decision that she thinks is the best way to proceed. And ultimately, if she can articulate why she's doing it that way, that's going to stand up.
Heading into tomorrow, which is technically day 4 of jury deliberations, kind of 3.5, if you will, but day 4 that we've seen deliberations happen. It's very much so going to be the same as what we saw today until if and when we see a verdict.
Yeah, I mean, you're exactly right, Julia. It's just, like you said, the if and when. We don't know. Again, we're not in the minds of those jurors in that jury deliberation room. It is only the jury to help, not taint anything, not get other things in their head that wasn't said during trial. So it's really just those 12 members in that room deliberating for hours and hours and hours on end. So again, we don't know what they're thinking. We don't know at what process they're at. I said in my story that I did earlier today, yesterday they came back saying they were deadlocked. Today we heard nothing. We heard nothing for the full time we were sitting in that courthouse. So we don't know how far along they are in the process, what they're thinking, when we can expect that possible verdict to drop. But the fact that Judge Mims is going to be there tomorrow for the next day of deliberation must show some sign, that the ball is rolling, that we're not waiting till Monday. We're going to continue on these days until we get that verdict, Julia.
Callie, thank you so much. And of course, you will be there bright and early once again tomorrow. We have continued to see protest demonstrations outside the courthouse since the very first day of trial, which was last Monday. Yesterday, Tuesday, things did get quite heated. One person we know from authorities was arrested. Today, things simmered down just a bit as we continue to wait for that final decision. 13 on Your Side's Josh Albertus is also live in downtown Grand Rapids for us. And Josh, you reported on what we saw happen yesterday and also today. How would you kind of describe the change in climate from one day to the next?
It is a very, very different scene behind me, Julia, than when we were here talking to you on Evening Plus yesterday. There were still some people out here, but at this point today and for about the past half hour, there's not a single demonstrator left, assumedly until the jurors come back for deliberation tomorrow. So a very, very different scene, and you kind of have to ask yourself whether or not that may or may not have been because of what happened yesterday, and whether people did not want to repeat the kind of scene that we saw yesterday. As you said, we heard from police. They said that one person was arrested for fighting yesterday. We kind of saw the groups merge together, and that's where the lot of the tension kind of boiled over, and we saw police intervene for a few minutes there, and that's the kind of scene that we saw yesterday, but a lot less tension, it seemed like, today. But even with that, there were still a sizable number of people out here demonstrating into today, even given what happened yesterday. So our team spoke with some of them to see, kind of why they were out here today continuing to do this. We talked to someone who was, just 11 years old out here demonstrating for this cause, and also someone who said they had retired, but they had been in their 29th year of service to the GRPD. And so we talked to those people, see what they had to say when they told us about why they were out here.
I don't get it because he was on the floor. If he was on the floor, there was no reason to pull the trigger.
Looking at that video, he had to make a decision, and I believe that he was in fear of death.
That was wrong for the officer. Now imagine if that was your family member, you would be sad.
I have nothing but love for everybody involved, and I am very sorry that they lost somebody in their life, but I also see how much the SCHURR family is also losing.
And so certainly a different scene, it seemed like, as I said, Julia, from yesterday compared to today. But, whenever we do get a verdict, I mean, all eyes are going to be on, how the community reacts when a decision, or perhaps lack of a decision, if it is a hung jury in the end, how the community responds to that, Julia.
And Josh, I was especially moved by that young boy that we heard from in your story today. Most of what we've seen has appeared to be adults, but this is a story and a case and a scenario, on both sides that really has impacted so much of our community, from our young people, through every age of adult. I was certainly, a little taken aback by hearing from, such a young boy about this case, but it really is a scenario that so many people feel moved by. That's why we've seen those, those protests, or those demonstrations, the signs, the chanting, everything continue into an 8th day today.
It was absolutely, telling that we had such an age range out here. I think, it kind of speaks to, how much, this trial and what has unfolded in the last few years has really impacted the community and weighed on many people in the community of seemingly all different ages, as we saw the age range there today. But there's also, a range of, at the same time, people where they kind of stand when they come out here for these demonstrations, or where they stand on, the case or the issue at all. You have people, of course, that are supportive of the Loyola family, of Patrick Loyola, who lost his life. You have people who are supportive of former Officer SCHURR. But in addition to that, we've also heard a lot of people, kind of expressing these sentiments of, we just hope it kind of stays peaceful. That the community can heal from whatever happens, and the community can pull together in the wake of this. But, obviously, we've been talking about it all evening. We still do not have a verdict, and how that is going to impact the community and how the community is going to respond to that is probably going to play a big role in how or when or if the community really is going to be able to come together and heal, with whatever way the jury goes.
Absolutely, Josh. I know it sounds redundant, but we really are in this pattern of wait and see. And you will also, once again, be continuing to cover this story for us as we head into tomorrow, day 9. Josh, thank you so much. And I do want to mention a moment that you may have seen on our newscast yesterday, or maybe early this morning, where there was sort of a white powder that was dispersed into the air when protesters were getting more heated yesterday. We did speak with the Grand Rapids Police, and that was deployed by a police officer, and that was a warning powder. There was no side effect or harm to that being sprayed. It was kind of just a moment of, all right, back up, let's all take a breath. But that was a piece of video that I've seen circulating, across news stations in our entire community, on social media, and something that I know could maybe spark concern. So something I wanted to point out there that we did learn late last night. 13 on your sides, Riley Mack is also live for us in downtown Grand Rapids. Riley, you have also been sitting there in the courthouse day after day. And, today we really didn't see a whole lot happen. Obviously the jury room is a separate scenario, but what were some of the things that you took away from, being there for another 8 hours today?
Yeah, absolutely, Julia. The biggest takeaway is that it's been a really long day, and I can certainly attest to that. We just wrapped up day 8. Now we are, definitely going into day 9 of this trial. And the end of the day today marked 18 hours of jury deliberation. So let me tell you about my role here. I am waiting outside the courtroom to try to get in to see that verdict, to see the reaction of all of the people involved in this case. We only have one camera allowed in that courtroom, so we need someone inside to be able to capture all of the reactions. And it's a small courtroom. As I've said before, there's 44 seats in that courtroom, and a lot of those are reserved for the family members. So I have to wait in line all day to try to get a spot in there. And that's what I did from 7:15 a.m. to 4:45 when that courtroom closed, to hear absolutely nothing, because we had jury deliberations today, and we didn't hear anything from the judge talking about it. And so I've spent my day surrounded by supporters on both sides of this, SCHURR family supporters and supporters of the family of Patrick Loyola, who have been waiting for a seat in that courtroom. And let me tell you, patience is wearing thin for sure. I think that started yesterday around 3 p.m. when we had the judge come out and say, the jury is deadlocked. When that happened, the reaction, there were some gasps in the courtroom. There was also some groaning and eye rolls. And I think the patience has started to wear thin since then, just knowing that, we don't know if the jury is getting any further towards a verdict. The judge certainly made it clear to the jury that she would like to see a verdict. She said that when they were leaving, please get to a verdict. And one thing is for certain, for sure, is that, the jury is obviously taking this seriously. If they're spending 18 hours deliberating over that evidence and going over this case, they're taking this seriously. And I hope to see a verdict soon. I think everyone does. If it doesn't, we could end up with a hung jury, which means it's ultimately up to Kent County Prosecutor Chris Becker if he wants to retry this case. I don't think anybody wants to see this happen all over again. But yeah, one thing's for certain too is that, both of the attorneys put forward a good case if the jury is spending this much time arguing about it.
Riley, I so appreciate that analysis and kind of showing our viewers, what exactly is happening, just in processing what you guys are doing each day as we head into day 9 tomorrow. You will as well be there with Josh and Callie. So thank you so much for your reporting and your analysis this evening on Evening Plus. And we, of course, have everything you need to know about the trial on our website, on our YouTube page, on 13 Plus. If you are missing any moment of the trial, you can go back all the way to day 1. We have everything clipped for you, recaps put together on Evening Plus. So if you are looking to learn any bit of information about how we've gotten to this current moment, we have that on all of our platforms for you. 13 Plus, our YouTube page, our website, in both a written and video form. We are going to take just a quick break, and then we will get into some weather, and also we'll look back at the Portage tornado from 1 year ago today.
Look at that. I could write off movies. For a second, I thought I was going to die because I started seeing light coming through the ceiling and stuff.
So she went with this room right here. And then Mark ended up in the yard.
Meteorologist Blake Hansen is here with me now, and those were immediate reactions following the Portage tornado 1 year ago today exactly. It happened at 5:55, so just in the last hour, really, to the exact minute. That storm, 135-mile-per-hour winds, a path of destruction 11 miles long. We all remember this day quite vividly. We're going to talk about it in a moment, but first, Chief Meteorologist Samantha Jacks takes a look back and also a look at the progress we've made since then.
1 year after an EF2 tornado tore through the heart of the community, leaving behind a trail of destruction and lasting impact.
It has changed the perspective, I think, for every resident of Portage when you hear the tornado sirens go off or you see a tornado hit another community. It's certainly become a much more of a reality.
In the hours immediately following the storm, members of the community and first responders rushed door to door.
And we were very fortunate that we did not have any fatalities. There were certainly some injuries. But we really came out unscathed by way of significant personal harm.
Tree loss was massive, an estimated 48,000 trees gone, changing the landscape of Portage.
Some they were able to pick up the pieces and kind of get back within a few weeks. Others are still struggling to put their home or their structure or their business back together.
That's after over 600 homes and more than 100 businesses were damaged. Some still working to reopen a year later and funding an ongoing struggle.
FEMA, we applied shortly thereafter. It was initially denied. Governor Whitmer did appeal that decision, and unfortunately in mid to late January we received word that that appeal was denied.
Local nonprofit and state stepped in to help fill the gap. left denied by FEMA funding. Now, more than $3 million in state aid is being distributed for business and residential recovery.
There's always going to be a greater need for financial assistance.
The Portage Community Center has been on the front lines since day one.
We helped over 400 families in the three weeks immediately following the storm with food, clothing, and personal care items.
The ripple effect continues. Food pantry visits up 8% and personal care needs have jumped 27% since this time last year.
A lot of families were, why they may have had insurance, were underinsured. So there are a lot of out-of-pocket expenses, and things are just still tight for a lot of these families.
Resilience stories are everywhere, adults and children who lost everything.
And we have students in our after-school programs whose houses were completely lost. And dealing with trauma resilience, helping these kids deal with the trauma that they've experienced.
As our severe weather season continues, city leaders say they're more prepared and more aware than ever before.
Those tabletop exercises that every community does became far more real. So there is that kind of learned experience now.
Listen to those warnings, listen. They're out there to keep us safe.
And the City of Portage and its partners say recovery efforts will continue well into this year. For information on how to donate or access services if you are in need, you can go to portagecommunitycenter.org. And there was a ceremony just in the last hour or so tonight to commemorate and look back on this 1-year anniversary. City leaders were there. They gave away tree seedlings. And our Maddie Monroe was there to gather video and speak with people. And we'll have that story tonight at 11 o'clock. And I mean, we all remember this day, and it kind of, you know, I was there, those shots of the Pizza Hut that gentleman was inside of. I talked with him kind of just minutes after that, and I mean, the shock and disbelief and everything, it was wild.
The chaotic moments that occurred as that tornado came through. You know, I remember myself, former Chief Meteorologist George Lessons. We were here that day.
Yeah.
We kind of had a feeling there would be severe weather around, but you know, I don't think there's ever a time where you really prepare yourself that an EF2, a high-end EF2 tornado, in fact, Julia, would rip right through, you know, a part of our area here in West Michigan. And, you know, it's easy for many to, you know, forget about the storm because it didn't impact 99% of our viewing area here in West Michigan. But for that 1% in the track of that tornado in the Portage area, parts of Kalamazoo County, you know, they're still contending with the aftermath even to this day. And, you know, it probably still will be that way for the foreseeable future. So it's just one of those things that, you know, I think one of the sound bites that community director was saying is warnings, warnings, warnings. Always listen to them because, you know, we're really lucky that no one was killed in this tornado.
Right.
And so that's such a big deal to really listen to these warnings, no matter how you get that information.
Because things can just transpire so quickly. Again, those employees that were inside that Pizza Hut, they were working, going about their day, you know, whatever. And then I believe what they told me during that interview, if I can remember correctly, they kind of saw what was happening outside and wanted to get under some protection. So they went to sort of the very back of the store and kind of was out of any way of anything that could fall on top of them. And then they lived through it and then afterwards came out and saw what kind of had happened around them.
And I think it's one last point here is that it's just so important to have a plan just in case. I know it might seem like we go on and you know, some people, oh, you're sensationalizing things. No, it's all about just in case.
That one time that something happens.
You never know when that can happen. And even though we don't live in Tornado Alley per se, we get severe weather and we can see dangerous storms such as what happened in Portage a year ago. But, you know, while there's still some cleanup, there's still a lot of things going on for those community members down there. At least no one was killed in that tornado. And hopefully that will, you know, tell others to really listen to these warnings that we try to give out.
Yeah, that was something that shocked me. I came here from Oklahoma, which, you know, much more known for tornadoes and that sort of activity. And this was my, you know, first week out there. I thought I got away from the tornadoes. And we've had several tornadoes since. There were more than several just recently this year. So
we've had 15, 16 plus tornadoes already this year. And, you know, thankfully they have been on the weaker end of the enhanced Vegeta scale. Still, a tornado is a tornado, and we need to pay attention.
And some of those neighborhoods in Portage, I remember driving through, you know, the significant damage you saw there. And then there were other neighborhoods where the tornado didn't pass. and totally fine, totally
fine.
untouched. And
Yep.
it's just, that's one of the most shocking things I think about tornadoes.
And that tornado in Portage, higher end EF2 tornado, some of the footage there, we call this a multi-vortex tornado, where there was almost different appendix of this tornado coming through the funnel cloud, just indicating such a strong rotation in that mesocyclone, in that supercell tornado that was ongoing again in the Kalamazoo area, the Portage area. So it's hard to believe it's been 1 year.
Yeah.
So the good news here, if we want to, kind of switch gears
Bring it
here,
full circle,
bring
yeah.
it full circle, is that we have a very quiet forecast
Yes.
ahead of us. No severe weather, no real impacts ahead of us over the next week. Which
Exactly what the moms deserve.
Yes,
as we had a beautiful weekend.
As we head towards Mother's Day weekend, I showed this yesterday. Nothing has changed, Julia. Thursday, Friday, into the weekend, even into the start of next week, it will be smooth sailing. Some increased cloud coverage as we're pushing later into the evening hours now, the early evening hours. But numbers are still very warm here in West Michigan, 60s and 70s for the most part. Notice South Haven, notice Ludington, though.
A little chillier.
55.
Yeah, yikes.
Look towards the thumb. It's only 47 at Bad Axe.
Oof.
And that's because of the influence of the Great Lakes that generally occurs this time of the year.
Powerful lakes.
Yeah, the wind is out of the north and east, and yes, that's an offshore wind for us at the lake shore, but the wind is pretty light today, and that's allowing the lake breeze to impact some even at Lake Michigan, despite the general flow out of the north and east. We have a cold front coming through right now. It's moisture starved, meaning there's not a lot of rain associated with the front coming through West Michigan, the southern Great Lakes. Still can't rule out a limited shower, isolated shower this evening through tonight, but most spots will stay dry. Really, it's just a matter of getting this front through the area, and then come tomorrow, high pressure builds in from the north. We'll have sunshine all day long. It's going to be a beautiful day, just slightly cooler tomorrow. We're in the 40s tonight. Yeah, we'll be falling into the 40s by the end of the night. Tomorrow, lower 60s at best. I could see.
But see, that's not, we're not, it's not like it's going to be 32 degrees outside.
No, it's not going to be.
We can take it.
We can handle that. And then with the sun around, it's going to feel really nice. The sun
Yeah.
is very strong now. We are in the second week of May. Well, almost in the second week of May. Also, another beautiful day for tulip time. Today's been great. A lot of people out there. Tomorrow's another day to get out and enjoy the tulips that are just in full bloom. It's a beautiful festival this year. And we're going to continue the quiet weather really through the weekend. If there's two things that we'll keep an eye on, that's really being aggressive, I think, here, is there is the potential for morning frost on Friday. We're going to fall into the 30s Friday morning. It'll be briefly on the chilly side. Again, that's why we say don't plant until Mother's Day. That's the rule of thumb here. But if you have, no worries. Just make sure you protect any plants, any vegetation you may have. Otherwise, the only other thing on Saturday is that there will be another cold front coming through. This cold front is kind of washing out, we call it, as it sweeps through the Great Lakes region, meaning that it's just losing its steam. Is it possible we spark off a shower or two on Saturday? I suppose so. I really just don't think much of it at this point, despite even what you're seeing on the map here. I think that's being well overplayed. Mother's Day, though, that's for sure going to be a nice day.
Gorge.
And look at the numbers. Yeah, we're going to be in the, despite that cold front trying to come through Saturday, again, it washes out. It doesn't cool us down at all. We're back into the 70s Sunday, and we might be near 80 in those warmest spots early next week. This is the 6 to 10 day outlook. So this goes from the 13th to the 17th, middle of May. The darker shades of red right over us.
Woohoo.
And again, I said this yesterday. This is from the Climate Prediction Center. This is just showing that there's a better probability we're going to have more days than not in that 4-day span in the middle of the month where we're above average.
And does that map there where we're in the darkest red, like some of the states to the south, are they cooler than us? Or is that not how that works?
Well, it's just in terms of compared to average for that specific area. So no, technically,
gotcha. Okay.
Oklahoma, Arkansas, Texas, they'll be warmer than us.
Gotcha.
But they might be closer to their respective average at this point of May compared to us. Their average, I would assume, offhand, probably well into the 70s, if not even near 80, lower 80s at this point of May. They might be closer to that number compared to us. Average in the middle of May is right around 70.
Gotcha.
We might be near 80. So that's the difference there. But regardless, quiet forecast.
I mean, What more can you ask for than that?
I
can't wait for this weekend.
We're on cruise control here in the
Yeah.
weather department, which is so nice compared to, a year ago.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, Blake, thank you so much. We love that forecast. Thanks so much for being here with us on Evening Plus. We will be here right back at the same time tomorrow, 6:30, live on 13 Plus. You can watch for free, download on your TV. We'll see you back here tomorrow. Have a great night.